Well, I am really excited today to do this cooking show because I have a Mother's Day present.
Early.
None of our kids are going to be able to be home for Mother's Day, which is coming up on Sunday in just a few days. And I was surprised by Matthew and Alana last Friday with this wonderful new Dutch oven, which is really heavy. And I've always wanted a Dutch oven. My kids all have them, got them for wedding gifts, and I didn't have one. So now I have mine. So for our show today, we're going to kind of do a special Mother's Day show.
Yeah, using my new pottery, or not pottery, what do you call it? It's cast iron.
It's a cast iron.
It's not
so this
pottery.
is my new cast iron Dutch oven. So we are going to make a no-peak stew. And there's different kinds of stews that you can make. Many of them, of course, have carrots, potatoes, celery, whatever, kinds of veggies that you want. But we're doing a simpler one, which Gary kind of objected to because he wanted to see some more
I wanted potatoes,
veggies in there.
Carrots, celery, the typical stew things,
But we're not doing typical.
Yeah, we're gonna go atypical.
My day
it's your day.
for
It's
Mother's
your
Day.
pot.
So this is
we're
what
going
I wanna
atypical.
make.
We're gonna
Okay.
do the no-peak beef.
Right, okay. So tell us about the meat
Well,
that,
the meat
that you chose.
I chose this. It's from our local grocery store. They call it a spoon steak, and I am going to cut this. You can buy, when you make a stew, you can buy stew meat, or you can just buy these slabs of meat, and it's called spoon steak. I'm not sure what cut of meat it is. I gotta believe it's from the round, the beef round, and it's probably the outside round. I'm not sure because the inside muscle is a little bit more tender, so typically they'll use the outside round to make a stew meat out
And Gary's
of.
talking like he knows something about meat, and that's because he used to work in the meat industry for the first
15 years
15
after we
years
got married.
that we were married.
Right.
So he learned quite a bit about beef and different cuts of meat and that kind of thing. So you're going to cut them into, kind of like the bite-sized
like 1 inch
pieces.
squares, right?
And while you're cutting the meat, I am going to cut some Bella mushrooms.
Okay.
And the recipe I found called for just canned mushrooms, but we really like the Bella mushrooms, so that's what we're going to put in here instead. And was this about the size that I should be doing?
Yeah.
They're almost about, less than a quarter.
Perfect.
So we bought one package of Bella mushrooms, so that's what we're going to put in, is a whole package. And the recipe is really easy. We're using the Dutch oven. You can also make this recipe and put it in your crock pot. And if you did the crock pot, it would just cook in your crock pot for 8 hours. Using the Dutch oven, we're going to have it cooking for 3 to 4 hours on a temperature of 250 degrees. So when you have it going like all day or half of the day like that, then you just cook it at a slow temp, and it's going to turn out pretty amazing.
It will be very tender. Now you may have noticed I'm going to have Brett shoot on the plate of meat over here. I had a couple of the pieces of meat laying over top, and if anybody who works with beef knows this already or understands it, that you'll see discoloration. It looks like it's discolored, but where you see the redness and then you see some darkish brown, all that redness area, that just means that was exposed to the air. So oxygen works with the meat to make it a red color. So where you see the dark meat, that's where the 2 other pieces are laying over top of that. So it's nothing to be afraid of. It's not like the meat is, when you open up a package, you'll see the same thing at the grocery store. That the meat that's been exposed to the light and to the oxygen will have a little more of, they call it a bloom. It'll be a little more red.
So it's almost similar to chocolate blooming. It just makes a different color.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Changes colors, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with the meat itself.
Okay, I have my mushrooms all cut up. ready
You're really
for
fast.
you when you're
You are
done.
really fast. So I'm going
And-
to keep working on this.
Now, and we're putting in about 2 pounds of
Right.
stew meat. If you have a larger family and you want to do more, larger amount, then just double the amount. So we're going to add 1 can of condensed French onion soup. And I've actually never purchased French onion soup. We've made French onion soup. So it's
Never bought it out of
No.
a can. That was my first experience searching
so
that down.
all of your seasonings are all contained right here.
Right.
So you have the majority of your seasoning is from that French onion soup. And then we're going to have 1 can of cream of mushroom soup. We're going to add put the 2 cans of soups together. And then we're going to add a 1/2 cup of some kind of a dry wine, whether you have a cooking wine or some other kind of wine. If you have a special wine that you like to drink, some people, we've actually might like to enjoy a glass of wine while you're doing some of the cooking. So you might just add
I
some
would
of
do
that in there.
But
So
right now, I think I'm going to
you're
take a pass. I'm
just busy doing
yeah,
that,
'cause
cutting up all
I
that
can
meat.
see I'm going to fall behind here from what you're mixing.
Okay, so I'm just going to take my
I'm gonna keep
scraper
working on
out.
this.
So it's Mother's Day on Sunday, and our typical, kind of traditional Mother's Days, I think, since we've had children, is really just spending the day with our kids. Because we were always several hours away from both of our parents. We were closer to my parents, but it was still, 2.5 hours was about the closest. So we typically just had a special Mother's Day celebration at home, whether there was something that was maybe going on at church that, a mother-daughter, dinner or lunch,
Sometimes
that
they'll have
kind
a
of
brunch
thing.
at our parish. They'll have a Mother's Day brunch if you can fit that in. We currently now in Marshfield, it's been going on for years, but at our public high school, there's a art fair that goes on. We may have talked about this in past years, but that's always a wonderful.
So that's put
event
on
to
by
attend.
New Visions, the New Visions
Right.
Art Gallery for the Marshfield Clinic. So
Right.
that is always a highlight of our day on Mother's Day. So we'll, take in the art fair, and
Then sometimes we'll go and get some ice cream. That seems to be a popular thing to do.
it used to be kind of fun in Cedar Rapids when we lived there for 9 years. Most restaurants or the little ice cream shops that would open up in the spring once the weather turned nice would have free ice cream or some kind of a free something
Free
for
ice
the
cream for
mother.
Mom,
So
yeah.
that was always kind of fun to see how many places we could go to and get in on all those
Yeah.
freebies.
That was good. That was fun. Okay.
Okay, so you
you're
can-
gonna put the.
Right, so you
okay,
can
I've got the meat.
do this
the meat is
next.
spread out. Put the meat on the bottom, as you can see here.
So it's basically just layering your meat
Yeah.
first, and then put
First,
the
Then
mushrooms on top.
There you go, like so.
This is a little bit lumpy, but that's okay. And then we're just going to top it then with our soups and wine.
It's that simple.
And now if you wanted to do some other kind of, like we said, no peak stew, you could add in some potatoes and carrots and celery. A couple of the other
Can I help here a little?
recipes, sure, a couple of the other recipes I had actually called for like a tomato soup or even a V8 juice, and that was how they
I think
got the additional
right.
liquid.
Besides the French onion soup you put in there, if
Right.
you want to take
Yep.
a couple of onions and just slice
You
them
could
into
do that,
rings
too.
and throw them in there, that would be good too.
Yeah, especially with using the fresh mushrooms, just make sure that you've got all of those mushrooms kind of all covered.
Right.
And then
Okay.
we're just going to put that lid on,
Right. We got kind of
and we're going to bake this at 250 degrees in
okay.
your preheated oven.
All right.
And like I said, for about 3 to 4 hours. Now, I was actually kind of surprised because some of the recipes that I had looked at said to bake them for 4 to 5 hours, but we just
But we did
happened to have a trial.
And we are finding out that 4 or less, 3.5 to 4 is probably going to finish the job.
So I just happened to borrow Megan's pot.
Get that out, okay?
Yeah, actually, you could take that over to the table.
Okay.
So we have a blue pot from Megan, and then we'll grab
Okay.
our noodles.
And then we're going to put this in. No, we don't need to put that
We'll
in.
just leave that out for
We'll leave
right
it
now.
out.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can grab that basket.
Okay.
Okay. So we are going to have our videographers for
For dinner
sharing
tonight.
dinner tonight. So I just thought this would be really cool because
Did
this.
you tell them that we're going to do dinner tonight with
I
them?
did, and this is
Okay.
how it turned out. And I did taste it just a little while ago, and the meat is just
Melts
in your mouth.
It's to die for.
It is. Okay, and to go
And then-
along with that, then I made some noodles. So we're gonna have
Some
some
egg
egg
noodles.
noodles. Put your stew on top, and your meal's all set to go.
And then because I didn't get my potatoes and carrots and celery in there,
You're gonna have noodles
we're
instead.
going to have noodles and some kind of a green salad.
Then we'll have a
maybe?
green salad. So we'll make up a Caesar salad,
Okay.
and of course we'll have to have some wine. And typically, when you have beef, a red meat, you would have a red
Red wine.
wine. So we'll have
Yep.
some
Poultry, usually
Cabernets.
poultry is white wine.
Right.
Red meat is red wine.
So one of my
That's kind of a
favorites
rule of thumb.
is Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to have a pre-Mother's Day dinner tonight with Brett and Brianna. So we're going to
Fantastic.
head
So-
out to our sun porch. And I think that's the first time
It's
that
our
we've
first time
eaten
we've eaten
out
out
there.
there this spring. It's sunny today, so the porch warms up very nicely.
Okay.
And it was 82 degrees the last I checked out there. So
So we are going to serve our guests our wonderful pre-Mother's Day dinner. So we'll let Is it tasty enough?
Very good.
oh yeah,
Okay. Is
melt
it good?
in your mouth.
Okay.
Excellent. All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
To the world. Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day to my mother and Gary's mother in heaven, and to my sisters that are celebrating their Mother's Day, nieces, friends. There's just all kinds of mothers out there.
Everywhere.
So I hope everybody has a wonderful Mother's Day and enjoy spending the time with your loved ones. And until next time, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Cooking with Ruth. So until next time, happy cooking.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Do you want to start the show? Do the introduction?
What's my
You know, instead of me this time?
Sure.
Yeah. Why don't you do the intro?
frequency are you at?
You do the intro, and then I'll just kind of relax on this show here a little bit.
I just want to make sure it's not too bad. Gary, you want to keep talking?
Sure, I can keep talking. Are you guys gonna
He'll
get?
talk your arm and
You
leg
guys are
off.
all twisted up. You're also twisted.